O-O-T-C. Hey, that's cool.
You got a podcast?
Well, I didn't know that.
That's cool.
Now you do.
Welcome. We are back. Oh, that's cool. OTC's very own podcast. All about the great people that we work with here at OTC. I, of course, am Jared Durden, and with me as always...
It's Andrew Crocker. I teach here as well, and last time you and I were... Actually, this was not the last time, but a couple times ago, we were talking right at the end of the semester, right at the beginning of the summer, and I'd asked you your emotions, your feelings. What's it like to be on the tail end of a semester, and what are your feelings now that everything's kicking up?
I am excited. I am a little anxious.
What would make you anxious?
Well,
First of all, before we get... How long have you been teaching?
Oh boy, I started as an adjunct at OTC in 2013, and I've been full-time since about 2015.
You could do this stuff in your sleep then. Why the anxiety?
I think the answer is obvious, but you know, with the recent changes in masking, with everything kind of going on, you know, I guess it's not as anxiety as much as concern. You know, I mean, we have a lot of responsibility as it is in the classroom, but you know, if people who don't teach didn't know, we really care about our students, and so to see them kind of in the state that they're in is you know, there's a lot of emotional labor there as well, I think.
Yeah, so I do think there is kind of there's a real interesting aspect to it, which the students that are attending, I mean, they really want themselves the best education they can possibly get. They are showing up during a pandemic, and it's just a lot to ask somebody, but it does come to show you that the people that are showing up, giving us their time, giving us their presence, really care, and I think we have an obligation, which I know you always meet, and I hope everybody always meets, which is to meet their degree of urgency and meet their degree of concern and give them the best possible semester we can give them.
Absolutely. And if people hadn't caught it, you were on a panel kind of discussing these ideas at the professional development days. And there's a video of that somewhere, probably?
I don't actually think there is a video. They recorded it. I don't know if they recorded it and have posted it anywhere. But one thing I really tried to stress to people, because a lot of what we were hearing on that panel was to give instructors should give themselves self-care. Really valuable, absolutely super important that you do that. And that we should, somebody had said, I think it was James Carpenter, please correct me, who had said we have to meet the students where they are. And I like that. And
I like that too.
Yeah, and because we tend to be very dogmatic. We tend to be creatures of habit. We like things to happen exactly the way they always happen so that things are simpler for us. But man, we got to go the extra mile the next year and bend over backwards for these kids and non-kids, non-traditionals, who have really worked their tail off to come to class during not a super welcoming time to come to anywhere in public. And that does mean that sometimes you have to be flexible and you have to be willing. You know, there's a phrase, you give them an inch and they'll take a mile. Well, I'm not sweating miles right now because a semester is 2 marathons back to back. And I'm not going to sweat a mile in that. And so please, everybody who's listening, if we have instructors listening, and of course any staff, anybody that interacts with students, please keep in mind that these people are as vulnerable a population in a lot of different ways as we've seen. And so we need to act accordingly.
I think, too, we need to be aware that, you know, we're all people. Then there's a lot of, besides faculty, all of our staff, administration, and employees here at OTC have families, have lives, have had to go through this as well, have changes to their duties, have to take new approaches as well. So, you know, be kind to yourself and let's be kind to each other. I'd really like to see something that I'd asked on the last couple podcasts is I'd like to hear about everybody reaching out and talking to and meeting someone new. So a kind of a challenge for you in this first week, in the first couple of weeks of classes, is to introduce yourself to someone you don't know, say hi, have a little conversation with them, and tell us about it. You can find us on Twitter. I'm going to make a Facebook page, I think, even though I know that's old hat now. We heard from Daniel, but follow us and in the comments or in the comments on the video in the Facebook group, let us know about that experience.
Yes, absolutely.
So to get things going today, our next guest here is kind of an interesting way that it came about. So this is our first guest who reached out to us, said, I like the podcast. I have this really great topic I want to talk about. Can I come on? And we absolutely said yes and got him as soon as we could.
Yes, please do that. If you're listening and you are interested in something, we want to talk about it with you. Please do that.
Absolutely. And so today we have Craig Granger is joining us. How are you doing, Craig?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Great. One of my favorite follows on the OTC Facebook group. And of course, just on social media in general, I really love following you. You're so irreverent. It's such a great thing to follow.
And active in the community, and we'll bring up some of that as well. But to start us off, Craig, tell us a little bit about yourself and your relationship to the college.
I started teaching adjunct here at OTC about 11 years ago, and became full-time about 10 years ago. And right now I teach microbiology and pathophysiology down at the Richwood Valley campus, and really enjoy it down there. And yeah.
Why do you enjoy it down there so much? Have you taught at the Springfield campus?
I have taught up here.
What's your speed? Do you like the Richwood Valley a little bit more laid back, or a little bit more the bustle of the Springfield campus?
More of the laid back.
Okay.
Definitely of down there. I mean, I do enjoy visiting up here, but down there, I mean, I really enjoy teaching microbiology. I'm the only one that teaches microbiology down there, so I have my classroom set up however I want it to be, and I've gotten to really know the staff and the other faculty and the other students that are down there, and really enjoy them quite a bit.
Fantastic. Also, our first Richwood Valley.
Jennifer Bump.
Jennifer Bump
was our first Richwood Valley. Our first everything really was her.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. That's true. So I wanted to bring up, I recently saw you in the paper. You were featured for your garden.
Yes, I was. Someone nominated me to do the Garden of the Week thing, and so the news leader came out and interviewed me and took pictures, and so I was featured a couple of Sundays ago in the news leader.
And you were telling me you have a business related to this. You have a greenhouse. You're all out.
What is the garden?
It's basically just succulents and ornamentals. I don't really do fruits and vegetables, but my summer project, I wasn't teaching this summer, so my summer project was to start a plant business. And so one of the things I love doing, and I always have loved doing, is going to flea markets and antique stores, buying weird, unique containers, drilling a hole in it, and sticking plants in it. And so I started to do that as a business. Last year, I built a greenhouse, and so I have that greenhouse filled with all kinds of stuff. And I'm on Facebook, Grow for Good 417. So look me up.
Scale of 1 to 10. You hear your garden has been nominated or has been put up, whatever phrase you want to put up, for a garden award in the local newspaper. Scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you?
I'm super excited. It was awesome, and it was great to have them interview me, and the write-up was really good, and really have enjoyed this whole process going through this.
Is there like a club where all the other garden award winners go to? Like, you guys all know each other?
Look into that.
Yeah. Definitely. I imagine that's got to be a small but passionate community. Is the gardening folks.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I garden, but not well. Matter of fact, I always forget that I've gardened because I have it stowed away.
Hey, that's why I have succulents and cactus, because you can forget them.
Oh, sure. Maybe that's not a bad idea. What is it? Can I ask what's a succulent?
They're in the same family. They don't take a lot of water.
Okay. I hear that. I think you eat it. It's delicious.
No.
Succulent?
Are succulents in the same category as cactuses?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Cactus are a type of
succulent. Cacti, excuse me.
Cacti.
That's good. That's been my problem all along, is I grow very needy plants that I forget about and then wither on the vine, literally. But no, I got to get those, like the cactus, just you could leave them out in the desert sun and they'll...
Yeah, just if you do succulents, don't eat them, I guess.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, they sound good. They sound yummy, just on name alone.
So something I like to ask to kind of get to know our who we're interviewing is tell us about someone that is a hero to you or inspired you, or someone that you'd like to share and kind of hold up to our listeners.
Well, I guess I'd have to say probably my parents, both my mom and my dad. My mom was a 4th grade teacher, and so, I mean, she retired probably about 15 years ago. And my dad was an educator too. He was a driver's ed and shop teacher, and he became principal and assistant superintendent where I grew up in Sullivan, Missouri. And so I grew up with them, and I mean, that's how I found my love for education and of the plants that were mentioned, and really got, all kinds of, I learned a lot from them. And so that has propelled me throughout my life up to now.
Fantastic. Teacher in SPS system or in Sullivan?
Sullivan.
Sullivan.
Yep, exactly.
And where is Sullivan?
It is about an hour southwest of St. Louis off I-44.
Okay. Is that the boot heel?
No.
Not quite? No? Oh, southwest. I'm going the wrong way.
Which do you take after more, your mom or your dad?
I don't know. That's kind of hard to say.
Hard to say?
Yeah, probably a little bit of both.
Yeah. I'm a photocopy, as you know, I'm a photocopy of my mom in every conceivable way. My dad you might as well be completely unrelated, my dad and I. But but my daughters are kind of starting to do that as well, where they're starting to emerge with characteristics that show that they lean more one way. Do you lean towards a parent yourself, Jared?
No, not necessarily.
Yeah.
Not necessarily.
Really? Maybe it's just my
I look
family.
a lot like my grandpa.
Really?
Yeah. And as I get older, a lot more traits. I used to kind of joke about how in his closet he was super organized guy, right? And he in his closet he would do all of his shirts color coded.
Interesting.
Right? Like,
yeah.
or and I used to kind of tease about that, and now. It's so much more easy to do it that way.
You color code your shirts?
Not exactly color. I do it more like by the type of shirt, right? But then, I'll tend to kind of put things because then it's easier when you're just getting ready in the morning to match stuff.
Okay, I was about to say, do you look at your closet and you're like, I'm feeling blue, I'm feeling turquoise?
I don't know as much as blue. It usually comes down to which pants I have are the cleanest and then finding something that goes along with those.
Yeah.
How long have I wore these jeans?
That's right.
You can stretch a good pair of jeans a few days if you need to, though.
That's very true.
I've been between a rock and a hard place. You can stretch a pair of jeans a good while.
I usually only wear,
even if they get grimy, it kind of looks stylish.
I usually only wear jeans in class though on Fridays though, so that gives me a week to really prepare. So tell us a little bit about when you were a kid on the playground. You go out for recess. What was your thing? What was your game?
I don't necessarily remember all of them, but I do remember, this is aging me a little bit. This is back in like 3rd or 4th grade. I do remember playing the game. We would make the game V because there was a series on TV.
I remember that with the aliens
yes.
that were lizard people.
Yes, I do remember that about 3rd or 4th grade.
V, how does it go? Oh, do you it's role playing? So you are
I don't remember it was 3rd or 4th grade, but yeah, it was more like role playing. Mm-hmm. But it's something about I can't remember. These aliens would land on Earth and they had a mask, human mask on them or something, and
were they body snatchers or they just assumed human form in some way? Okay,
I think, and they would take off.
Are you familiar with the Marvel world?
Yes.
So they're like the Krull.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Sure.
From the Captain Marvel film, yeah.
Again, our niche audience.
I know. we like to hit a good 10% of the... Absolutely.
My mother-in-law listens, and I'm sure she's rolling her eyes at this point. So Yeah, fantastic. And I remember they did a remake of it, or they tried, and it did not work.
Oh, yeah. I
It
think
was pretty short-lived, I think.
Yeah.
Not too long ago, a few years back, maybe. So our
Role playing on the playground, though, that is hardcore right-brained. Hardcore right-brained. Did you have many kids playing with you, or you're just?
Oh, yeah.
You're just on the swing set by yourself.
I remember it was a big mini-series going on at that time.
Yeah. Okay. I gotcha. All right.
Yeah.
So then you'll definitely get these references. Our big question: battle to the death, Gumby versus Mr. Ed. Who wins? And most importantly, why?
Oh gosh.
Anybody could just tell you the answer, but we need to know the why.
We want to know who does Craig Granger root for, and what's his reasoning?
I would have to say that it would be Mr. Bill because of his voice.
No, I'm sorry. Totally different character. Gumby.
Could you give that answer?
Gumby versus Mr. Ed.
Could you give that answer again? You think it'd be Mr. Ed?
Yeah,
because of his voice. Gumby had a very pleasant, angelic hum to his presentation. I honestly, I think that's the best reason we've heard so far. We have had Jennifer Bump tell us that she believes that Mr. Ed would be able to diffuse the situation with his ability to speak.
Okay. Close.
Yeah.
And Andrew's only satisfied by the answer being Mr. Ed winning.
Yeah, it's a very good question as to voice timbre. To what degree might that play a role? I still really, I don't know. I did want to dispute something that you said a moment ago. It's not who you're rooting for; it's who you think would win.
That's true.
That's a whole different question. I have no idea who I'd end up rooting for.
Oh, that's very fair. Yes.
I appreciate Gumby's youthful naivete and Mr. Ed's worldly learnedness, but I don't know which one I would end up rooting for if I had to choose between the two.
Well, you have to choose. Well, I guess if we ever interview you, though.
Yeah. Well, I'll save my answer. I think
really
everybody
gotta
already
prepare
knows how I
yourself.
feel about the Gumby versus Mr. Ed thing, but who would I root for? That's a very interesting question. I'll have to look into.
I know it gets bigger every time we.
I know we have built a Gumby versus Mr. Ed universe at this point. We actually had Mr. Oganyemi with us a couple episodes ago, and he didn't recognize either characters because, So we're starting to realize that maybe we need to upgrade some of our references here. You have references in class? Your references, Craig, are up to date? Are they way behind? You seem like somebody.
Up to date.
You seem like somebody that would have up to date references.
Yeah, pretty up to date because I pay attention to social media,
Yeah.
things like that. And so,
You seem like somebody that'd be able to work a meme
Yes.
into a lecture if you have to.
yeah,
Mhm.
I can do that.
Yeah. It's okay. What do you?
That's a real skill set.
It is. It absolutely is. Yeah.
A well-placed GIF will help.
Yes. Catch them off balance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really my go-to more than the meme. Is I like the GIF, especially now you can use them in texting. Like I communicate almost solely by GIFs now. So, Craig, you emailed us saying, hey, I want to be on this podcast because I really want to talk about a virus that had killed cows called Rinderpest. Am I saying this correctly?
It is. That is correct.
Will you tell us a little bit more about... Well, I probably didn't give the best description there. So your interest here that you sent to us, will you tell us a little bit, what is the question today? What question are we answering today?
And keep in mind, he's a hard science guy, so he's close to you, but I'm ways away. So talk to me like I have no idea.
Okay. Well, the question is basically, why have you not heard about it? It's basically what the question is.
Excellent, because we have not.
And lots of people really haven't heard about it, but it is pretty important disease. And you haven't heard about it because a few things. First of all, it's a cattle disease. So why would you know about that? And second of all, it is the second disease to ever be eradicated off the planet Earth. So you haven't heard
Meaning
about it.
it's not coming back.
It's not coming
It's
back.
gone.
There is stores of it in certain facilities, but beyond that, it's after smallpox, it's the second disease to be eradicated, even in the wild. So, Rinderpest itself, the word stands for cattle plague. It's a German word for cattle plague. And this virus can decimate 95% of the cattle in a particular region.
When was it eradicated?
2001 was the last case. They waited 10 years before, and then 2011 they said, okay, it's eradicated.
Right, just in case it resurfaces or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it can wipe out 95, like almost every cow in your lot, whatever you keep cows in?
Yeah, 95%. Not only, and it's weird because it will kill off 95% of all even-hooved ungulates. So cattle, buffalo, giraffes, any of that bovine family that has even toes, it can wipe them out.
Wow. And how did they eradicate? I like that terminology, but and it's very specific, right? How do you eradicate a virus?
Vaccinations. So they
vaccinate your cows.
Yep. So there was a massive vaccination process that happened. I believe, I can't remember the date exactly, but somewhere in the mid 1900s, and the mass vaccination of all the cattle finally wiped out the Rinderpest.
So you've explained why we might not have heard about it.
Can I ask a question about that, though?
Yeah.
Why would vaccinating... Because we are in a society right now, there are even some countries, let's get away from America, some countries like New Zealand are incredibly well vaccinated against COVID-19, and yet they still occasionally get cases. How is that possible? How is a vaccination possible to wipe something out in some circumstances and not fully wipe something out in another circumstance?
A lot of the times it depends on the virus itself, how easily it's able to mutate. This particular virus, it doesn't mutate as easily as the SARS-CoV-2 virus. It is made up of different type of nucleic acid in it, and so it can easily mutate to like the different variants that we have now, the Delta variant and so forth.
Because you had said that there's only 2 viruses that have been eradicated.
Right.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so eradication, extremely difficult. You basically need a huge leg up from the virus itself. It can't mutate effectively. It pretty much just can only exist in its particular whatever.
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
And if we remember from Vivian's episode when we were talking about variations, we're using the analogy of cereal.
Yes, she said if you can create a vaccine for Cheerios, and the vaccine for Cheerios, I'm almost directly paraphrasing Dr. Elder here, but you can create a vaccine for Cheerios, and that will also take out the multi-grain Cheerios, and also take out the frosted Cheerios, and also take out, but maybe not as effectively as the original Cheerios. He's saying that these Cheerios are largely staying Cheerios. It's very hard for it to mutate into different kinds of Cheerios.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay. Cheerios are delicious breakfast foods. If anybody from Cheerios is listening,
heart healthy too.
Yeah, very heart healthy.
I think we just got another sponsor.
Could we make some calls on that?
So it's pretty obvious why we. I think you made a good argument for why we would have never heard of it. Why do you think it's important that we do hear about it?
Well, because of the lessons that we actually learn for eradicating it. By doing same sort of things like we're doing for COVID-19, basically contact tracing. So there was a mass effort to do contact tracing of cattle and try to sequester cattle that had gotten that particular disease so that it would not end up spreading to, other animals, especially wild animals or in other feedlots or other farms and whatever. The vaccine is super effective even after a single dose. So that is very important, giving that single dose, especially if we're looking at third world countries, it's really hard to find that same cow, 2 weeks later and try to give them that vaccine again. Vaccine, no side effects. So that's, making sure that the cattle do not get sick from it at all. Providing lifelong immunity. So, which we're seeing with COVID-19 that may not be so much the chance because some people have been vaccinated and they ended up getting a different variant. But in that line, it reduces the severe symptoms of COVID-19. So it's still important to end up getting vaccinated.
My understanding is it would lower the viral load that you're shooting out from yourself, right?
Yes,
right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Couple other things, lessons that we learned from it is having community involvement. So a lot of, like in Africa, they didn't necessarily trust veterinarians to give vaccines to people, or to the cattle.
To the animals.
Yes. And so there was a mass effort to train other people to give the vaccines. Maybe your neighbor down the street, someone that maybe they would trust a little bit more to give them that particular vaccine. And so that helped to ramp up, increasing the amount of those animals that ended up getting the vaccine.
That helped?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Rather than, just a person in a lab coat giving shots, hey, it's the neighbor down the street that has been trained on giving the vaccine. And so more trust was involved there. And some of the other studies, like the epizoologic studies, we're talking about cattle, sort of like epidemiology studies, tracing. We learned, ways that we can trace particular diseases and how it will, go to different animals, and trying to figure out ways that we can do the exact same thing with humans. It's a little harder for humans because we're not obviously in a fence, so we're moving around, so we have this increased amount of this transmission that could occur that don't necessarily have with the cattle itself.
Gotcha. So we don't contract this. This just from just cattle.
We do not contract this.
Because there is another, very ignorantly, I would compare this to mad cow disease, which people can catch, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I want to check real quick because we talked about this earlier. Can you recite the actual name of mad cow
I
disease?
cannot. I do know the first word is bovine, and then the rest is spongiform. Is that right?
There you go.
Bovine, spongiform, something else.
Encephalopathy.
Okay, that's the one. That is why he teaches what he teaches. It's a lot easier when I'm talking about a bill becomes a law. That's nice, clean. None of this Latin stuff with 19 syllables.
Sorry, I interrupted your question though. You were asking comparatively to. We're familiar with mad cow disease.
That's right. Yeah,
it is transferable to humans. How do these two diseases compare?
They don't
at all.
Really.
That's a fair answer.
This is a virus, and viruses are a lot different from what causes mad cow disease, or BSE, bovine spongiform encephalopathy. I just wanted to throw that out there. But that is a prion disease, and they're two totally different things, basically.
What is a prion disease? Can you describe
Prion
that?
is a misshapen protein. And the misshapen protein, what it does is it's like a bad apple in the bunch. You have the bad apple, you have this misshapen protein, and it ends up causing in your brain all the other proteins to misshapen itself. It ends up forming a hole in the brain, spongiform.
That's what that means?
Spongiform.
Okay.
Yeah. Encephalopathy in the brain, basically.
Okay.
And those are usually transmitted by ingestion. So like a virus can be airborne, but this is mostly ingestion of basically the nervous system of the animal.
So is the protein initially foreign to the animal? Where does the protein come from that's misshapen?
Not exactly for sure how that first animal got that misshapen protein.
Oh, okay.
But the weird thing about prions themselves is that everything else, when we talk about bacteria, fungus, or viruses, they all have nucleic acid, so they can transmit genetic data to the next batch down. But prions are just proteins, misshapen proteins, nothing else.
So then that makes sense why it was transferable to people, is that protein still exists in the animal's meat, and then we're consuming it.
Yes.
It's all coming together.
Yes.
I just lazily connected the two because
Yes, you did.
cows.
That was pretty lazy.
Yeah.
So then back to I'm gonna mess up the name. Rinderpest.
Rinderpest.
This instead is an actual virus. Has been eradicated. What are the earliest origins?
The earliest origins of it, not exactly for sure about that, but we do see that in the early, right after, or early AD, that there was, Rinderpest would go into Europe and end up wiping out like 95% of the cattle at that time. I don't know exactly if there was, past before that of it, but there are stories of cattle plagues and pestilence throughout all of Europe throughout that time.
That's pretty phenomenal that this disease has been around that long. But it wasn't until, I'm going to misquote you, but 2001 that they finally were able to wipe it out altogether. Pretty
Yes.
phenomenal that this is the age we're living in and that stuff can happen.
Exactly. Yeah. They
Also, is interesting to me because you said that this, relative to other viruses, this is a relatively easy is the wrong word, but there is a path forward to eradicating it because it doesn't mutate very effectively.
right.
And yet it really wasn't until 2001 we unlocked that particular lock.
Right. It took. There has been hundreds of years of research into Rinderpest because of what all damage it ended up doing. Somewhere in the 1600s, I can't remember the king of France at that point, but he designated a group of scientists to actually study Rinderpest, and thus was born veterinarians.
Oh, really? That's kind of the and that's where the profession began, huh?
Yes.
All right.
Exactly.
That's noble beginnings.
Yeah. Exactly.
Trying to eradicate pests.
Yes.
I don't know how much you know about biology. That's adjacent to your field, but like when we talk about all the different species we are aware of, I had read somewhere a long time ago, so it's wrong, but I had read somewhere that we know a whole lot about like insects, particularly, and pests, because we're trying to figure them out, who they are, where they are, because we're trying to protect ourselves and protect our crops, very importantly as well.
Right.
Yeah. And so that's how entire these careers get born. That's how these that's how it's the butterfly flaps its wings out of King's Demand in the 1600s, and later on we have entire careers out of it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Necessity is the mother of invention, right?
Oh, I like that. I've heard that before, I think.
Oh, I was going to take credit. Yeah.
You take credit for that. That's going to end up in the I screwed up segment at the beginning of our next podcast. Turns out I did not come up with it.
Fantastic. So anything else that we need to know about Rinderpest? Any other lessons that you want to share?
Andrew brought up, he asked if humans can get it, and they cannot get it, although, interestingly enough, the measles virus is closely related to Rinderpest. And so it is thought that at some point, long time ago, I don't know, I don't have dates written down right now, but that there was a spillover event, basically that humans, agrarian society, live close to the cattle, and that somehow that there was a mutation that ended up occurring. They're rare, so that a mutation ended up occurring to where Rinderpest ended up infecting humans, and thus measles was born.
And how confident are we that that is the case?
We're mostly confident basically because we don't have stories of measles way back in ancient times. I said I'm not sure about dates, but then measles started cropping up. But we had Rinderpest in ancient times, and both those viruses are very closely related, and they both cause the same sorts of signs and symptoms in both measles in humans and rinderpest in cattle.
Thank goodness, not 95% kill rate, though, with measles. Thank goodness.
It's pretty high.
Is it?
But thanks to the MMR vaccine, we have, pretty much eradicated measles. And in fact, the CDC a few years ago said that had been, that there's no community transfer of measles until there was a couple years ago we had a spike because of anti-vaccine movements.
That was in Northwest?
I can't remember. Right.
So I'd like to give everybody a chance. Kind of, is there anything it could be related to college or yourself you just want to brag about?
We can go right back to your garden if you want.
Yeah. I'm actually an active. It's called homesteading. I think they've given it a term. But we not only have gardens. I built a greenhouse this summer. We keep chickens and ducks, and we're trying to be as sustainable as we can. Kind of working towards that. So we do actually do the vegetables and stuff, and we're not perfect at it yet. I'm definitely an experimentalist when it comes to these things, but it is this kind of fun way to experiment, right? To kind of use a scientific mind and through trial and error, you get better, right? You don't do everything perfect at first, but as you go, have a lot of fun. But we do have a lot of succulents, which was like my beginning trainer, because they pretty much just go on their own. I actually have one in my office, and it goes a couple months sometimes without me watering it, and it's still just kicking along there.
See, our weakness was we always end up growing like tomatoes and corn, and that stuff doesn't survive unless you routinely check in on it.
Be careful.
And just, I got 2 kids, 2 dogs, I got a wife, I got it's 15 things going on. It's just real hard to remember every day to get out. I have trouble remembering every day to take medicine for myself to keep myself healthy. And so it's hard enough for me, and every garden of mine eventually bites it.
Our biggest challenge has been squirrels, because our neighborhood is just packed. Like there's way too many for their own habitat to be stable, in my opinion. But they were eating everything. Like we grow sunflowers. Last summer they ate all of our sunflowers, all of my corn. Like they just decimated our crop. So I've been trying to deal with that like in a humane way. And so I got squirrel traps, and I've been one at a time moving them to a much nicer location out in the country. And so that's been interesting as well. Peanuts, if you didn't know. That's what they.
Well, we have the authority. We have the gardening authority. How do you protect your garden from
advice from? Yeah, exactly.
We plant tomatoes to feed the squirrels, basically.
How about that?
So that was my first instinct, right? Was to be diplomatic. So I collect. I'm serious. So I collect all of the walnuts from our walnut tree, and I started just like putting them out in bins near the stuff I didn't want them to eat. Like, hey, just take this, but they're too greedy. So again, what would you like to brag about?
I don't know. As I said, I love teaching microbiology. I love talking about diseases every time. So I'd love to visit with you guys more about certain diseases.
Oh, please do. Why? Because I know why I love disease. I'm morbidly fascinated by them. Where does your fascination with them come from?
Well, not only that, the biology behind it, but kind of the geopolitical history, what all that they have done to change the world as we see it. I think that history right there is super fascinating, that a little virus like Rinderpest could end up causing something like the French Revolution. Or
how would it... Rinderpest caused the French Revolution?
You're in Andrew's wheelhouse now.
Well, there's a lot of factors that involved with the French Revolution, but part of it was that there were starving people. Part of the reason there were starving people is because Rinderpest ended up wiping out cattle around that time.
Okay, that's fascinating. So once again, we have this virus. It kills the cows. It makes the people hungry, and they demand a better government that can ostensibly provide for them.
Yep.
Crazy. Absolutely crazy. Yep. That was not in Les Mis. I did not mention anything about Rinderpest and Les Mis. I do not remember Hugh Jackman ever singing once about a cow disease.
It's not as glamorous.
Well, I mean, not with that attitude. That's fascinating.
So we've learned the word Rinderpest. We learned about this virus, bovine spongiform.
Just straight spongiform, I think.
Spongiform?
Yeah.
Cephalitis?
Oh.
Oh man, I just saw Craig get
I blew it. Tell us one more time.
It's too bad this is an
encephalopathy.
It's too bad that this is an audio platform. We did see Craig get triggered just now. I wish the people could have seen it.
Encephalopathy. I'm gonna remember now though, because in an earlier episode I talked about the way I learned students' names is through public shame. So especially if you laugh at me, I can say it over and over again now. So man, there's a lot going on there in today's episode. We're so happy you're listening. And Andrew, did you know all of that?
I did not know that.
I didn't know that either.
Now you do.
Thank you so much.
Eric.